True scary stories, dark secrets of Forgotten Isle, and isolated communities fight for survival. Chapter 1. The Calm Before the Storm. Nestled in the embrace of the restless ocean, Forgotten Isle was a haven of tranquility. Towering cliffs rose dramatically from the surf, their jagged edges softened by lush green vegetation that thrived in the salty air. The island, shaped by the whims of nature, seemed almost magical, a hidden gem untouched by the chaos of the modern world. Residents cherished the simplicity of their lives, each day marked by the rhythms of the sea and the cycles of the sun. As dawn broke, the golden rays danced across the water, casting a warm glow over the quaint cottages that dotted the shoreline. The scent of brine mingled with the fragrant blooms of wildflowers that blanketed the island in a riot of colors. Families gathered on porches, sipping coffee and exchanging greetings, their laughter echoing in the fresh morning breeze. This small community was tightly knit, bound by shared experiences and a collective love for their beautiful home. The absence of outside interference lent a sense of safety, fostering an unspoken belief that nothing could disrupt their idyllic existence. Among the islanders was Lena Mitchell, a dedicated biologist whose love for the natural world had drawn her to Forgotten Isle years ago. With her wild curls framing a freckled face, Lena exuded an infectious enthusiasm for life. Her days were often spent exploring the island's diverse ecosystems, from the rocky tidal pools teeming with life to the shadowy forests that whispered secrets only she seemed to hear. Lena's heart raced with excitement whenever she stumbled upon a rare species of plant or an elusive bird. She was captivated by the delicate balance of life around her and felt a strong responsibility to protect it. Yet, beneath Lena's adventurous spirit lay an insatiable curiosity that drove her to delve deeper into the island's history. There were whispers of ancient stories hidden within the cliffs and the murmurs of the sea that called to her. She spent countless hours in the local library, poring over old maps and faded journals, searching for clues that might reveal the island's long-buried secrets. Her obsession with uncovering the truth was both a blessing and a curse, compelling her to seek answers that many of her neighbors had long accepted as lost to time. However, that tranquil morning took a turn when a palpable tension gripped the air. As the sun reached its zenith, Lena noticed the usually bustling docks were eerily quiet. The boats that routinely arrived with fresh supplies and visitors had vanished, leaving behind a heavy stillness. Lena's brows furrowed in concern. She made her way to the waterfront, where a small group of residents had gathered, their expressions shifting from confusion to unease. "Has anyone seen the ferry?" asked James Carter, the island's fisherman, his brow furrowed as he scanned the horizon. His call was met with a chorus of murmurs, voices laced with uncertainty. "Maybe they're just delayed," offered Evelyn Smith, the island's historian, though her eyes betrayed her skepticism. It's not unusual for storms to disrupt travel this time of year. But as the hours stretched into the afternoon, the realization began to settle in like a heavy fog. No boats, no planes, nothing but the relentless sound of the waves crashing against the shore. Lena felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a gnawing dread that seemed to creep into the corners of her mind. As evening approached, the warm hues of sunset painted the sky, but the beauty of it all felt muted under the growing sense of panic. The islanders, usually so optimistic, began to whisper about the unexplained absence of communication with the outside world. Radios crackled in frustration with static, and cell phones displayed only the dreaded no-signal message. The air was thick with an unsettling mix of disbelief and fear, a foreboding sense that something was terribly wrong. "Is this some kind of joke?" Lena heard a voice quaver, the question hanging in the air like a weight. The disbelief in the crowd began to morph into frustration. As they clung to their phones, the glowing screens only reflected their growing anxiety. Lena took a deep breath, trying to ground herself amidst the chaos. "We need to stay calm," she urged, her voice steady but her heart racing. "Let's gather in the town hall and discuss what we can do. We've faced challenges before. We can figure this out together." But as she looked around at the faces of her friends and neighbors, she saw the flickers of fear overshadowing their resolve. A collective understanding dawned upon them. They were not just isolated. They were cut off, trapped in a web of uncertainty with no clear way out. The calm before the storm, Lena realized, was slipping away. As the shadows lengthened and darkness descended, the island's charm began to fade, replaced by a palpable sense of dread. Little did they know, the storm was not just a weather phenomenon. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel the fabric of their lives, forcing them to confront truths that had long been buried beneath the sands of Forgotten Isle. Chapter 2: Whispers in the Wind. As the days passed without any sign of the boats or planes that usually connected Forgotten Isle to the rest of the world, a palpable sense of panic began to grip the island's residents. The first day without supplies had felt like a minor inconvenience, but as the second day dawned with still no news, unease settled heavily in the hearts of the islanders. Panic, once a distant worry, crept closer to the surface, threatening to boil over. Lena Mitchell understood the gravity of the situation. She had watched as the panic in her neighbors' eyes deepened, as families inspected their dwindling food supplies with anxious glances. Her instincts kicked in. She needed to act quickly before fear could turn into chaos. With determination burning in her chest, she called for a community meeting, hoping to rally the islanders to face their predicament together. The sun hung low in the sky as residents gathered in the town hall, their expressions a mix of uncertainty and anxiety. Lena stood at the front, her heart racing as she surveyed the crowd. Familiar faces now marred by worry. The warm, rustic hall, usually a place of laughter and celebrations, felt stifling and cold. "Thank you all for coming," Lena began, her voice steady yet imbued with urgency. "I know we are facing an unprecedented situation, but we are stronger together. We need to discuss our options and find a way to survive until we can re-establish communication with the outside world." Among those gathered was James Carter, the island's weathered fisherman. With his broad shoulders and sun-kissed skin, he embodied the spirit of the sea. His hands were rough from years of hauling in nets, but his eyes held a softness that spoke of deep care for his community. "Lena, I've been checking the shoreline every day, but there's no sign of ships. The fish are starting to disappear too. What do we do if we run out of food?" His voice trembled slightly, betraying his usual stoicism. "We can't let panic take over," Lena responded, trying to quell the rising tide of fear. "Let's work together to ration what we have. We'll organize fishing expeditions and search for alternative food sources on the island. Remember, we have roots, berries, and the ocean at our disposal. We just need to think creatively." Beside James sat Evelyn Smith, the island's historian, a woman whose love for the past infused the air around her like a nostalgic perfume. With her silver hair pulled back into a tidy bun and her round glasses perched on her nose, she had an air of wisdom that resonated with the community. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice a soothing melody amidst the rising tension. "Lena is right. We've survived tough winters before. We need to rely on our resourcefulness. But what if something has happened out there?" James interjected, a frown creasing his forehead. "What if the mainland is in chaos? What if we are the only ones left?" The murmurs that followed James's words sent a chill through the room. As Lena scanned the faces of her neighbors, she felt the weight of their fears pressing down like an unyielding anchor. People glanced at each other, their eyes flickering with unspoken questions. This sense of isolation, coupled with the unknown, threatened to unravel the fabric of their community. As Lena tried to steer the conversation toward constructive solutions, the air around them began to shift. A low hum of sound filled the hall, like whispers carried by the wind. At first, it was barely perceptible, but as she spoke, the noise grew louder, becoming an almost tangible presence that wrapped around the gathering. "Do you hear that?" A voice called out, breaking the discussion. A collective silence fell over the group, the haunting sound reverberating in their ears. Lena felt a shiver race down her spine. "What is it?" someone whispered, eyes darting nervously to the windows. "It sounds like voices." Evelyn squinted toward the windows, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It's just the wind," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "We're in the middle of a storm season. It can play tricks on the mind." But even as she spoke, Lena noticed shadows dancing outside the glass. Figures flitted between the trees bordering the town hall, moving in ways that defied the natural flow of light. The flickering silhouettes sent a wave of tension rippling through the crowd, and the once close-knit community seemed to shrink in on itself, fear coiling around their hearts. "Perhaps it's just some wildlife," Lena suggested, attempting to calm the group. "We're on an island, and the natural world is unpredictable. Let's not jump to conclusions." Yet, as the whispers intensified, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. The island had always felt alive, but now it seemed to breathe with an anxious energy, as if the very land itself was aware of their plight. The meeting continued, but Lena noticed the conversation drifted into darker territories. Her neighbors spoke of legends, stories of ancient spirits that roamed the island, of shadows that foretold disasters. The fabric of reality felt tenuous, and she could sense the collective anxiety building like an approaching storm. By the time the meeting ended, a heavy pall hung over the islanders. Lena tried to instill hope, but as they dispersed into the twilight, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were teetering on the brink of something far greater than a mere communication blackout. Whispers echoed in her mind, warnings carried on the wind, urging her to listen, to dig deeper into the mysteries that surrounded them. As night descended, Lena stood at the edge of the island, gazing out at the dark, roiling sea. The waves crashed against the rocks, mirroring the turmoil within her heart. Somewhere out there, the world continued to spin. But here, on Forgotten Isle, a darkness loomed, shrouded in secrets that threatened to swallow them whole. The whispers in the wind were just the beginning, and Lena knew that to protect her home, she would need to unravel the threads of this mystery before it unraveled them all. Chapter 3: Secrets Unveiled. With the sun dipping below the horizon, the island plunged into an uneasy twilight. Shadows stretched long across the weathered ground of Forgotten Isle, where the once peaceful atmosphere had transformed into a simmering cauldron of uncertainty. The whispers in the wind had left Lena feeling as if the very air held secrets waiting to be uncovered. The growing anxiety among her neighbors gnawed at her resolve, propelling her toward a path she knew could lead to answers or further chaos. Determined to illuminate the dark corners of the island's history, Lena gathered a small group of residents to delve into the island's archives, housed in the ancient town hall. This building, with its creaking floorboards and faded photographs, had been a hub of stories, memories, and the lifeblood of the community for generations. Now, it was a crucial key to unlocking the unsettling truths that lingered just beyond their grasp. As they entered the dimly lit room, Lena felt a chill run down her spine. Dust particles danced in the narrow beams of sunlight, filtering through the windows, creating a surreal ambience. The walls, lined with shelves of weathered tomes, seemed to whisper their own tales, while the air was thick with the scent of old paper and ink. "Where should we start?" asked Tommy Jensen, a local carpenter with a knack for storytelling. His bright blue eyes scanned the shelves, searching for any sign of answers. He had been a friend to Lena since childhood, his creativity often helping to bring their community together. "Let's focus on the disaster records," Lena suggested, her voice steady despite the flutter of anxiety in her chest. "If there's something hidden in our past, it might help us understand what we're facing now." The group split up, each person combing through the stacks of papers and books. Lena found herself drawn to a dusty, leather-bound ledger tucked away in the corner. The cover bore no title, but she could feel its significance. She pried it open, revealing pages filled with meticulous handwriting, recounting events long buried by time. As she read, the words seemed to pulse with life, hinting at calamities that had befallen the island over the years. "Look at this," Lena called out, her voice echoing in the quiet room. The others gathered around, their eyes wide with curiosity. It talks about a series of storms, unprecedented ones that struck every few decades. They left devastation in their wake, and each time, the island took years to recover. Evelyn leaned closer, her brow furrowed in concentration. "And here," she said, pointing to a passage, "it mentions an unusual darkness that enveloped the island during one of the storms. Locals reported strange occurrences, disappearances, shadows moving in the forest, and voices carried by the wind." It sounds eerily familiar, doesn't it? An uneasy silence fell over the group as the implications of the words sunk in. The past was not just history. It was a recurring cycle that seemed to haunt Forgotten Isle, a warning echoing through generations. Lena felt a shiver run through her, realizing they were not merely grappling with a temporary isolation. They might be on the brink of a much larger crisis. As they continued to sift through the documents, a debate sparked among the group. Helen Myers, a pragmatic woman known for her cautious approach, spoke up. "We've always survived by waiting for storms to pass. We should stay put and conserve our resources. Panicking will only make things worse." "But what if doing nothing puts us in greater danger?" Lena countered, her heart racing. "If we just sit back and wait, we risk becoming victims of whatever is coming. We have to investigate these disturbances, not just for ourselves, but for the future of this island." Tensions escalated, with voices rising and clashing like thunder overhead. The air crackled with frustration as divided factions emerged. Lena sensed that this was more than just a disagreement. It was a fracture that threatened to undermine the very foundation of their community. Some residents were driven by fear, while others clung to hope, desperately seeking solutions to the enigma enveloping them. Just then, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, causing everyone to turn toward the sound. Outside, the sky was darkening ominously, a curtain of gray creeping over the horizon. A storm was approaching, one that mirrored the emotional turmoil simmering within the community. Lena's gut twisted as she realized that the tempest was not just a natural phenomenon. It was a harbinger of the challenges they would face. "We need to make a decision," Lena said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon of light. "We can't ignore the signs. We must either prepare for the storm or confront the darkness within us. What do you all choose?" The group fell silent, and as the wind howled outside, Lena could see the fear and uncertainty in their eyes. This was not just a test of their survival skills. It was a test of their unity as a community. As the storm clouds gathered overhead, an understanding flickered among them. This island had a history, a narrative woven from triumph and tragedy. And in that moment, Lena realized that if they were to unveil the secrets buried within the island, they would need to face both the storm raging outside and the one brewing within their hearts. With resolve, she led the way back to the town hall's entrance. "Let's gather our supplies and prepare to face whatever is coming. Together." As they stepped out into the gusty winds, Lena's heart raced with anticipation. The storm was near, both in nature and spirit, and the answers they sought lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be uncovered. Together, they would embark on a journey to unveil the mysteries of Forgotten Isle, a journey that would change their lives forever. Chapter 4. The Heart of Darkness. The storm that had loomed over Forgotten Isle for days finally broke, unleashing a torrent of rain that drummed relentlessly against the roofs of the island's quaint cottages. The downpour created a murky haze, obscuring the line between the sky and the sea, as if the island itself was caught in a shroud of grief. Yet, amidst the chaos, a fire burned bright within Lena. She gathered her companions, James, Evelyn, Tommy, and a few others, determined to press forward into the unknown. With maps in hand and their hearts racing, they made their way toward the less explored regions of the island. The terrain quickly became treacherous. The familiar trails were now slick with mud, and the dense canopy overhead obscured what little light remained. Lena led the group with an unyielding spirit, her eyes scanning the surroundings as she recalled the stories passed down through generations in her family. Her grandmother often spoke of hidden places on the island, where the earth held whispers of ancient peoples and forgotten histories. "Stay close," she instructed, her voice steady despite the chilling wind that seemed to echo their fears. We're on the verge of uncovering something significant. As they delved deeper into the heart of the island, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy with a palpable tension, as if the trees themselves were witnesses to a forgotten drama. The haunting cries of distant birds filled the silence, punctuated only by the occasional crack of thunder. With each step, Lena felt the weight of her family's legacy pressing down upon her. Her ancestors had lived on this island for generations, their roots intertwined with the land, their secrets buried beneath layers of history. "Lena," Evelyn called out, breaking her reverie. She was examining a peculiar formation of stones, each marked with intricate carvings. "Look at these. They seem ancient, like they're part of a ritualistic site." Lena approached, her pulse quickening as she recognized the symbols etched into the stone. "These markings," she said softly, "they resemble the ones in my grandmother's journal." She always hinted at a hidden society that once thrived here, one that knew the island's true nature. As they continued their exploration, they stumbled upon a series of dilapidated structures, their walls crumbling, yet imbued with an undeniable aura of significance. Ivy crept up the sides, reclaiming the remnants of a civilization that had long since vanished. It was here that Lena felt a connection, not just to the island, but to her ancestors, as if they were guiding her steps. "Do you think there's any chance these people were aware of the storms?" James pondered, his brow furrowed as he examined the ruins. "Or perhaps even the whispers we've been hearing?" Lena nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "It's possible. They might have known something. Perhaps they made sacrifices or conducted rituals to appease the forces they couldn't understand." The group continued their trek until they arrived at the entrance of a cave obscured by overgrown vegetation. It seemed to beckon them forward, promising revelations hidden within its darkened depths. Lena felt a surge of apprehension mixed with excitement. She could sense that they were nearing the heart of the island's secrets. "I'll go first," she declared, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. With each step into the cave, the temperature dropped, and the air thickened, pressing against her chest. The darkness enveloped them, broken only by the flickering beams of their flashlights, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. As they ventured deeper, the cave opened into a vast chamber, revealing an astonishing sight. The walls were lined with unsettling artifacts, fragments of pottery, remains of unknown tools, and relics that bore striking resemblances to the symbols they had encountered earlier. It was a museum of sorts, a testament to a culture that had vanished, but not without leaving a mark. "Look at this," Tommy said, crouching to inspect a particularly large object shrouded in a thick layer of dust. "What do you think it is?" Lena approached, her heart racing as she recognized it as a ceremonial mask, intricately carved and painted with a vibrant array of colors that had faded over time. "This could have been used in rituals," she murmured, her fingers brushing against the cold surface. "They might have believed it could protect them from the very storms we've been facing." Suddenly, an unnatural chill swept through the chamber, causing Lena to shudder. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows flickered ominously, as if something was awakening from slumber. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, but the pull of discovery was too strong. "Everyone stay alert," Lena warned, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something doesn't feel right." Before she could say more, the ground trembled beneath them, and a low rumble echoed through the cave, as if it were alive and reacting to their presence. From the depths of the shadows emerged a figure, cloaked in darkness, its features obscured by a veil of swirling mist. The atmosphere shifted, heavy with dread as the entity fixed its gaze upon them. Lena's heart pounded in her chest. This was no mere figment of their imagination. The figure seemed to pulsate with an energy that was both alluring and terrifying, compelling them to stay, yet warning them to flee. "Who dares to awaken me?" the voice echoed, resonating within the chamber like rolling thunder. It was neither male nor female, but rather a haunting amalgamation of both, sending shivers down Lena's spine. As fear gripped the group, Lena stood her ground. "We are not here to harm you. We seek answers about our past and the storms that threaten our future." The figure shifted slightly, as if considering her words. Answers? You may uncover truths, but know this. The past is a reflection of what lies ahead. The storms you fear are not merely natural occurrences. They are a manifestation of unresolved pain, echoing through time. What do you mean? James demanded, stepping forward despite the unease swirling around them. The island's heart beats with the sorrows of its people. The entity continued, its voice deep and resonant. To heal, you must confront what has been buried. The darkness cannot be ignored, for it will consume you. Lena felt a wave of realization wash over her. This was not just a warning, it was a call to action. They had stumbled upon a deeper mystery, one that extended beyond the storms and shadows, reaching into the very essence of Forgotten Isle. As the figure faded back into the darkness, Lena's determination solidified. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but the truth was within their grasp. With newfound resolve, she turned to her companions, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would uncover the history that had shaped their lives and confront the darkness that threatened to tear their community apart. Let's move forward, Lena urged, her voice steady and firm. We need to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it may be. It's time to face the heart of darkness. Chapter 5: The Storm Breaks. As night descended upon Forgotten Isle, the tempest that had been threatening finally unleashed its fury. The winds howled like tormented spirits, rattling windows and sending debris tumbling through the streets. Lena stood at the window of her home, watching the chaos unfold as the rain lashed against the earth, soaking everything in its path. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the turmoil that had taken hold of their community. Lena, James's voice broke through the din as he rushed into her living room, his face pale and eyes wide with alarm. It's getting worse out there. We need to gather everyone. Nodding, Lena grabbed her jacket, her mind racing with thoughts of the entity they had encountered in the cave. Its warnings echoed in her ears, urging her to confront the darkness that had been festering on the island for far too long. This storm was not merely a natural disaster. It was a culmination of their fears, a manifestation of the very essence that had haunted Forgotten Isle for generations. Together, they made their way to the community center, where the flickering lights struggled against the encroaching darkness. The atmosphere was thick with anxiety as residents gathered, their faces illuminated by the harsh glow of the few remaining lanterns. The walls vibrated with the howling winds, and the sound of the storm intensified, creating a cacophony of fear. Everyone, please listen, Lena called out, her voice steady but urgent. She climbed onto a makeshift platform to address the crowd, trying to channel the strength she felt within. I know this is terrifying, but we have faced hardships before. Now is the time for us to come together. The residents shifted uneasily, their expressions a mix of dread and uncertainty. Evelyn stood at the front, her brow furrowed in concern. But what can we do? The storm is relentless. And what about that entity? What if it's responsible for all of this? That's exactly why we need to confront our fears, Lena replied, her gaze scanning the room for support. The entity is a reflection of our past, a reminder of the pain we've buried. If we stand together, we can break this cycle of isolation. Suddenly, a deafening crack split the air, and a massive tree outside was uprooted, crashing down just inches from the center. Gasps erupted, and panic surged through the crowd. We need to take shelter, someone shouted, but Lena raised her hand, urging calm. No, she insisted. If we hide, we let fear control us. We must face the storm, both outside and within us. The entity thrives on our despair. Together, we can push back against this darkness. James stepped forward, his eyes bright with determination. Lena's right. We've been living in the shadows for too long. If we want to survive, we need to unite and confront whatever has kept us isolated from the world. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd, but doubt lingered in the air. What if it's too late? An older man shouted, his voice quaking with fear. What if we can't stop it? Lena's heart raced as she felt the weight of the community's fears pressing down on her. "It's never too late to fight for our home," she replied, drawing strength from their shared history. "We've survived storms before, but this time we must confront not just the wind and rain, but the darkness that seeks to divide us." In that moment, the power flickered, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps filled the air as panic surged once more, but Lena refused to succumb to despair. "We have to work together," she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "Let's light the way forward." Evelyn and Tommy hurried to gather lanterns and flashlights, and soon flickering beams of light danced across the room. The glow illuminated the anxious faces, and Lena felt a surge of hope. "We need to set up a perimeter around the community center," she suggested. "If we can create a safe space, we can hold the line against whatever comes our way." The group rallied behind her, fueled by a sense of purpose. They organized themselves, grabbing supplies and creating barriers to protect against the storm's fury. As they worked together, Lena felt a shift within her, a sense of belonging and responsibility that ignited her determination. Outside, the storm raged with unrelenting ferocity. Waves crashed against the shore, sending sprays of salty water into the air. The winds howled like an angry beast, tearing at the structures that had stood for generations. Yet within the community center, Lena's resolve radiated like a beacon. As they fortified their defenses, the lights flickered again, casting ominous shadows across the room. Lena could feel the presence of the entity lingering just beyond the edges of their makeshift sanctuary. It was watching, waiting, and she knew that they were on the brink of a confrontation that would test their unity. Then, as if summoned by their collective fear, the entity materialized just outside the doorway, its form shrouded in swirling darkness. The atmosphere thickened with dread as it began to speak, its voice echoing with a chilling resonance. "You cannot escape what you have buried. The storm reflects your turmoil, your pain. It will consume you if you do not confront it." Lena stepped forward, her heart pounding but her spirit unyielding. "We will face you," she declared, her voice ringing with conviction. "You represent our fears, our pain, but we are not defined by you. We are a community bound by love and shared history. Together, we will break free from this cycle of despair." The entity seemed to recoil slightly, its shadowy form flickering as Lena's words hung in the air. "You may try, but the past will always linger, waiting for the moment you falter." Just then, a massive gust of wind surged through the center, threatening to extinguish their lights. But in that moment of chaos, Lena felt a surge of energy from her neighbors. They stood shoulder to shoulder, united in their resolve to confront the storm and the darkness that threatened to consume them. With a fierce shout, Lena raised her lantern high, illuminating the chamber with a warm glow. "We are not alone," she cried, her voice rising above the storm. "We are more than the sum of our fears. We will reclaim our home and our lives." In response, the community erupted into a chorus of affirmation, their voices rising together like a mighty wave. The light from their lanterns grew brighter, pushing back against the shadows. Lena felt the entity recoil, its form flickering as if it could not withstand the strength of their unity. For a moment, they stood together, a bastion of light against the encroaching darkness. The storm outside raged on, but within the community center, hope sparked anew. As Lena looked around at the faces of her neighbors, faces filled with determination and courage, she knew that this was their moment of reckoning. The storm may have broken upon them, but so too had the chains of fear and isolation. In that heart-stopping instant, Lena realized that they were not just fighting for survival. They were reclaiming their story, rewriting their past, and forging a future unshackled by the burdens of history. With a rallying cry, Lena led her community into the storm, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, united in their fight against the darkness that had haunted Forgotten Isle for far too long. Chapter 6: Echoes of the Past. As dawn broke over Forgotten Isle, the first light illuminated the remnants of the storm's fury. The wind had finally calmed, leaving behind a landscape transformed by the tempest. Lena stood on the porch of the community center, surveying the scene. Debris was strewn across the ground. Fallen branches, overturned boats, and scattered belongings. But there was also a sense of quiet resilience that hung in the air. The community had come together, fighting against the darkness that had threatened to engulf them. Now, as they emerged from the chaos, it was time to reflect on the harrowing journey they had undertaken. Lena inhaled deeply, the salty sea air mixing with the faint scent of rain. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the chance to confront their fears, their past, and their future. The gathered residents were visibly weary but determined. Faces that had once been etched with fear were now marked by the resolve of shared survival. Lena called the group to order, her heart pounding with anticipation. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady and confident. "We have faced unimaginable challenges, but we have emerged stronger than ever." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice tinged with emotion. "This storm didn't just test our fortitude. It unveiled the truths we had buried deep within us. The shadows that loomed over us were not just the entity we confronted, but the secrets of our past that we must now face." A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. James added, "We've lived in fear for too long. Our isolation was not just physical, it was emotional. We need to confront our history, to acknowledge what happened here, so we can move forward." Lena nodded, feeling the weight of their shared experiences. "Exactly. The records we found in the archives revealed the tragedies that have shaped our island. We can't allow those histories to define us, but we also cannot ignore them. By acknowledging our past, we can begin to heal and rebuild." A sense of hope emerged in the gathering. They were no longer simply survivors. They were a community armed with knowledge and an understanding of their shared legacy. Yet, as Lena looked into their faces, she sensed an underlying anxiety, a question that loomed larger than their immediate concerns. "What will we do now?" a younger resident asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What if there are more secrets? What if the entity comes back?" The weight of that question hung heavy in the air. Lena took a moment to gather her thoughts, aware of the uncertainty that lingered like a shadow over their gathering. While we have uncovered many truths, it's clear that we must remain vigilant. Our journey is far from over. There may be more layers to our past that we have yet to uncover. We need to stand united to ensure that our community remains strong and ready to confront whatever challenges may arise. A wave of determination washed over the group as they began to discuss what this meant for their future. Ideas flowed freely. They could create community committees to explore their history further, establish support networks for those dealing with the emotional aftermath, and strengthen their connections with the outside world to prevent further isolation. As plans took shape, Lena felt a flicker of hope. Yet, a part of her couldn't shake the lingering fear that the entity they had faced was not truly gone. They had fought against it, but had they really won? The question gnawed at her as she listened to the discussions, reminding her of the unresolved mysteries that still shrouded Forgotten Isle. With the sun climbing higher in the sky, casting a golden light over the community, Lena knew it was time to address the remaining shadows. "I want us to be clear about something," she said, capturing the attention of the gathering once more. "While we can find strength in each other, we must also be prepared for the possibility that there are deeper threats lurking beneath the surface of our island. Secrets can often fester in the dark, and it is our responsibility to shine a light on them, no matter how uncomfortable it may be." As her words resonated, Lena could see the resolve in their eyes. The community was ready to confront the unknown, to stand together against whatever darkness awaited them. But as the meeting drew to a close, a deep unease settled within her. The sky above was brightening, but in her heart, the echoes of their past lingered, whispering of danger yet to come. The entity may have retreated, but its presence had left a mark on their lives, a reminder of the isolation that had clouded their existence. As residents began to disperse, Lena lingered on the porch, watching as the sun rose higher, casting long shadows across the land. The remnants of the storm served as a metaphor for the challenges they had faced, but they also represented the strength that had emerged in the aftermath. She felt a hand on her shoulder, James standing beside her. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Lena took a deep breath, allowing her thoughts to spill out. "I can't shake the feeling that this isn't over. We may have faced one darkness, but how many more are there? How can we truly ensure our safety when we don't know what else is out there?" James nodded, understanding her unease. "We'll face it together. We've proven that we can stand strong as a community. Whatever comes next, we'll confront it head on." As they stood together, gazing at the island that had been both their home and their prison, Lena felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, they had uncovered many truths, but the journey to unveil all the secrets of Forgotten Isle was just beginning. The storm may have subsided, but in its wake, it had left them with more questions than answers, more challenges than they had anticipated. Together, they would navigate the uncertainties ahead, armed with the knowledge of their past and the hope of a united future. As the sun finally broke through the clouds, illuminating the path before them, Lena knew that their story was far from over. The echoes of their past would guide them, but they had the power to shape their destiny. And with that thought lingering in her mind, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. Whatever awaited them in the shadows, they would face it together, prepared to unearth the secrets that still lay hidden on Forgotten Isle.